Serbian coverage, as opposed to, I've spent a fair amount of time in Serbia as well. And, obviously the Serbs don't take too kindly to Americans considering the bombing campaign, which, as rational as that campaign was, it's also equally rational that the people who were bombed don't hold Americans in the highest of regards. So that being said, in regards to, measuring Serbian policy, Serbia has been trying to court the Russians ever since the breakup of Yugoslavia. That has always been a thing, and it's always been in direct counteraction to NATO's policy of sort of intervening, take too kindly to Americans, populations within former Yugoslavia who were being ethnically cleansed at the times, whether they be Croats, whether they be Albanians, whether they be Bosniaks, and in some cases, even the Serbs themselves were ethnically cleansed. The thing about the Balkan War is that it, on all sides, you were seeing sort of ethnic cleansing taking place, but there was an overwhelming imbalance of power, with the Serbs taking control of former Yugoslav armories and taking control of the former Yugoslav military. UN went initially, and then later we had I4, the implementation force for the Dayton Accords, and then K4 with the Kosovo War. On the Russian side of things, they're going to continue to try and court Russian attention and Russian support for what they are aiming to achieve.
Can I put a pause to this for just 1 second? And just because keeping in mind that Richard just said he was at the border for like 70 hours and just got home and has his hand up. Let me make sure that we let him talk real quick, and then
by all means
we can hop back over here. Going back to Hungary, Richard.
Sorry, literally I got 1 hour. I'm heading back to the border. I just want to put out one thing here, which I don't know, you guys know, is not about Serbia, it's about Ukraine stuff. So our government, the Hungarian, the Romanian and Bulgarian government, we had issue with this Ukrainian government the last couple of years, especially with Zelensky, I don't know his name, sorry, because I don't know if you guys were about, but part of Ukraine, around 300,000 Hungarian people living there. Some of the territory is, most of the residents is Hungarian, so Hungarian and Ukraine. And we had major issue there with this government because in the past they've been allowed to use our language. We had a couple of law of schools there. We allowed to use and put Hungarian signpost or the street name and everything. And soon as this person get the government in Ukraine, basically they closed the school, the hospital, and they beat up Hungarian people on the street, and not just once, many times, because they speak Hungarian, and had issue with the Romanians, the Bulgarians, and I knew information from up to, I think, Luhansk with the Russian people as well. So I'm not Putin fan at all. I brought up under the Soviet communism, so I've got so many bad stuff from there. But I wanted to put this out because I never ever heard any of the information, any news or anywhere. So it's not just our government, is around them, so the Bulgarian, the Romanian. So literally the last 2 or 3 years, they closed 5 or 6 schools where they teach kids on different language. Hospitals, they beat up men on the street because they spoke different languages. And it's not just this territory, is up in Luhansk and where there are more Russian people lived. So it's just my opinion. When Putin talk about neo-Nazism, I think is one of the part where he's talk about. I'm not saying the war is excuse or anything. I'm not saying anything like that.
Are you seriously making this point?
Yes, because it's really big issue around here. This is a very big issue here. And we saw many times, we actually stopped any communication with this government. So, and at the moment, we got 160,000 refugees in our country, 9.6 million people living in Hungary, and no one sent any pennies or any helps here. I make the point, yes. And I've been in the border for 70 hours. I'm seeing the kids running across the border, losing their family and their parents. I make the point here. Yes. Thank you very much.
I have to quickly jump in. I have to. The only other thing, and then please take me off speaker because I don't want to interrupt. But again, just consider, because I definitively, pretty sure I saw this with my eyes, that it's Putin putting Russians in there to build that narrative. I'm sure it's on both sides, but he's brilliant, and that definitely happens. Yeah, that's just
He's a
consider.
master asshole orchestrator, yes.
Absolutely.
And he will absolutely put people in there to masquerade as whatever. And I mean, even bringing it full circle with the Serbian, the Kosovo, all of that. Guess where he got the idea to start spreading to start seizing on America and the Second Amendment and the military and all that. Yeah, you can directly trace those memes and stuff that popped up back in 2012 and 2013 to Russian IPs and all that. So yeah, I mean, this motherfucker has been pulling our strings for decades. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I'm done.
I think it's also important to note that, in some of these regions, there was and still remains a lot less centralized government control. So I'm not saying that these things happened or they didn't happen or who's necessarily responsible for them, but it has never been a policy of the Ukrainian government. And I think that's a huge statement when we start getting into this Nazification, denazification, ethnic stuff, is that the Ukrainian government itself has never condoned that activity. There have been certain localized government officials that have been involved in stuff like this. We definitely know that the Russians themselves have run counterintelligence operations to promote ideas like that. But assigning that to the current Ukrainian government is not necessarily an honest assessment.
Right, and we can definitely always go into they should be doing more. They should be paying attention more to all these different nationalities. I mean, Lord knows America has no fucking room to talk about this. I mean, right down to the fact that, I mean, indigenous Americans, anyone, but at the same time, when it comes down to what Putin is telling everybody and all that, like you said, it's not like an official stance or something they would condone, or it kind of comes down to, oh my god, like they've been dealing with this whole country was, I mean, just look what was his name, Yanukovych.
Yanukovych.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, trying to rebuild a democracy after everything that was going on. I mean, it's just, yeah, there's a lot, and wow, like politics, right? Queen.
I just want to add that it's kind of been, I'm sure other people can add more to this, but just really briefly, Orban in Hungary has enjoyed a pretty special relationship with Putin for quite a long time now, since I want to say 2018, 2017, probably before then as well. Orban himself is quite nationalistic, right-wing, and I think that he has not done a great job of dismantling that disinformation as well, and that some of the responsibility for things like that lied there as well. I'm sure other people can elaborate that more in detail. I just don't want to talk about it forever. But Orban, he's kind of quieting down now just during this crisis, but generally speaking, he's extremely right-wing. And ultra-nationalistic, supporting those, like, just to round off my thought, supporting those nationalistics, greater whatever, insert whatever empire project here, because he's had the same flex in Bosnia as well. So he's also someone who's responsible for that.
That just reminded me, because like, okay, so ever since I finally like started following what was going on in Hungary and stuff a lot more closely, like trying to learn more about my family and stuff, I can only make Hungarian goulash and nut rolls angrily now. And I mean, like, once I make it, like, that's de-stressing. Like, but just reminded me, I almost freaking took my eye out chopping a carrot the last time I made them. And like the pecans, I made them with pecans and with walnuts, the nut rolls this Christmas, and they were everywhere. Like, I was just chopping the hell out of them. Just like, screw right-wing governments and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let Sebastian go ahead.
Real quick.
He hasn't talked yet.
Real quick.
Okay.
Walter opened up his space. So I'm going to go ahead and get the link for it and post it in the nest, and we can start moving over there.
Yeah, we'll head that way in a bit. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to do some fact checking on the minorities in Ukraine and Hungarian part. Just looking at Wikipedia, because let's get the facts straight, right? And indeed, since 2017, the Hungarian and Ukrainian relationships deteriorated. It was over the new education law, which makes Ukrainian a required language in primary education in state schools. So apparently before that, maybe the Hungarian minorities didn't have to learn Ukrainian, and now they have. It doesn't really sound too bad, if I'm honest. Yeah, so that is the source of that. But they still have street signs in dual languages, and they still have schools. How many schools? In 17 villages. They teach Hungarian, if I get this right. So I wonder how bad this really is. It seems like a bit of a non-issue, if I'm honest.
No, it's a symbolic thing that people can tear open and say, listen, this is how they're betraying us, and those people should be on our side of the border. And people get sucked into these arguments all the time. And the previous speaker was from Hungary. It seemed like a rather intelligent person, but it seems he also had been listening to too much of his own side and not been actually paying attention to what the total narrative was.
Perhaps, yeah. Coming back to the nuclear power plant, so Ukraine has 4 nuclear power plants.
Excuse me for interrupting you. Because I've been waiting for almost an hour to say something, and
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This gentleman from Hungary actually told me something that I didn't know, but there is something that I know, that Mr. Orban, who is on the head of Hungarian government, is actually one of the biggest nationalists in the area, and he's trying to stop all European actions regarding Mr. Dodik, who is the biggest troublemaker in the Balkans now, and Mr. Orban and some other countries around the so-called Visegrad group actually are making a lot of problems to the EU. Besides that, Mr. Orban actually has a plan to reestablish some culture greater Hungary. I don't know. Do you know that most of the Hungarian that a lot of Hungarian territory actually was given to other countries after the World War I. It includes Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Ukraine, and I believe Slovakia. And Hungarian governments actually gives passports to the citizens of those countries, even if they don't have any connection with the Hungarian nation. Actually, they just ask them to become Hungarian agents. Actually made them Hungarian agents at those countries. Hungary is actually a very strange country in this conflict, and everything that NATO, as a NATO member, Hungary does everything to reduce the impact of NATO actions in the area. Hungary has a large border with the Ukraine, and they do not allow transport of ammunition and the military equipment to Ukraine. That's something what everybody should know. Honestly, they are actually.
Guys, I got some news.
Yes, go ahead.
If I may. Okay, thanks. So, hold on here. Okay. There's reports of, I'm not sure where it is. Walter shared it, but there was, okay, here we go. Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces captured 2 more transport trucks, one of which appeared to be loaded with 122 millimeter Grad rock artillery rockets, and the precise locations unknown. And it's actually pretty good that it's precise locations unknown, but that's the Territorial Defense Forces have captured that many trucks and supplies, so that's good. Actually, that's really good because they're supplying the Grad rockets that they certainly could be firing on civilians. So it's important on that front. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. I did see there was one drone. I think it was an Oran 10 drone that was. I don't think it was shot down. I'm hearing a woman in Kiev threw a bottle of cucumbers at it. Apparently, that's what it says.
You
She
missed
damn
all
sure
the fun.
that,
did.
but-
You missed
And
all
it
the
took
fun
down a
about it.
Curzon might be it. That might be it, but that's just a guesstimate. It's because it's unknown right now, but Walter shared it like 23 minutes ago. But it's like, then I just woke up and I might be going back to bed soon, but I'm just trying to get some more sleep. But
Patrick, I believe that you have more military experience than I, but for me, this Russian action is pretty strange. The most action is around the roads. I don't know how do they believe that they can keep going like this one for a long time, because the old military is around the roads and nothing happens, and on the box on the flags, okay, right and left flags. It's very strange for me. What is your opinion on that?
Well, John, I agree. We've seen these large Russian columns largely road bound. We haven't seen much cross country movement at all. Obviously, the terrain at the moment is not good for wheeled vehicles. We've even seen tracked vehicles stuck in the mud as of the past couple of days. And more than that, these long finger-like salients they're pushing out to try to encircle the Ukrainians. If the Ukrainians can cut loose significant forces, they may do what the Finns did to them in 40 and start cutting them off, encircling them, and just destroying them. So I think their logistics train is horrible. And I think they're taking a real big chance in some of the maneuvers they're making.
Yeah, I fought for 4 years in the war, and I wouldn't miss an opportunity like this one to hit them from all the sides, honestly, because a huge column is a target that you just cannot miss by anyhow, and
Absolutely.
destroy a lot of them. This is, I don't know, I haven't seen this because I just can't believe that Russians so how to say incompatible, whatever the word is. Said. Sorry, English is not my first language, and I haven't used it for years, and I just can't understand what's going on.
No, you got it right. It's incompetent. Yeah. A lot of us are in the same boat. I mean, I've been watching this. The open source guys have been watching this, Grammar, and everybody else, and we've all been looking at this, going, "How could any modern military screw themselves up so badly?" Even before they got started, there were reports of food shortages. They were short of fuel within like the first day. I mean, this is just this. It's unprofessional, I guess, is the best term I can use.
They missed to read Sun Tzu at least.
Oh, yeah, they started with misreading Sun Tzu and just kept not reading anything else after.
Exactly.
I think it's also important to note that many of the general officers involved here were made general officers not because of any actual ability, but because of their political connections and or a connection to an oligarch. So we have a general command structure that is not necessarily even good at basic command. And we're seeing a lot of that play out on the ground. What we're also seeing is due to the corruption within Russia, and we talk about the oligarchs, but you also have, you know, people on the battalion or company level that are selling fuel or selling equipment and or tires. And so you have this corruption that comes from the top and goes all the way down through. And this is a perfect example that we're seeing in Ukraine right now of what that type of corruption can do to a military. We also need to recognize that just because you modernize your military, if you don't modernize your doctrine, it doesn't matter. And we're seeing a lot of that where Russia has spent a ton of money on new gadgets and new toys, and they have not modernized their doctrine nor modernized their training to utilize that.
And there is one thing, I believe that they use conscript army, actually, that they don't use professionals. It's impossible that conscript army can be used in offensive action against other country. Especially those kids are not, they not learn to hate Ukrainians, to use that hatred for offensive actions. I just can see the kids from 19 to 20 years that are captured and killed. Putin used them as bonbons. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen this so far.
Yeah. So the Russians have a very large standing, quote unquote, professional army, and then they round it out with their conscripts. So you have contracted soldiers and conscripted soldiers. And you're right, the conscripts don't have the training and they don't have, they're not professional soldiers. So you're absolutely right about that. But they do have quite a large contracted or full time military also. Um, so that's you have both of those things working.
Yeah, I know. You can use conscript when you defend the country. I was not a professional soldier. When I joined the military, I had the RTO, Reserve Training Officer School before the war, but we didn't have a professional army in Bosnia, but we fought well because we were defending side. And of course there is other things were involved in our war that are not involved in this war. People here, I believe that Russians and Ukrainians do not hate each other, and I just cannot understand how anybody can believe that you can send someone that don't hate someone else to fight if it is not paid or that is not professional to be a professional soldier. Sorry, I will not speak anymore.
That's all right, John. But I think William makes a good point on the officer corps, especially. That's exactly the same problem they had in 1940 when they went up against the Finns. They had all these political officers that didn't know how to fight. They had troops that were mostly draftees and didn't know any better, and they got slaughtered. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I think it's interesting. They're now taking away these Russian troops' phones so they can't find out what's going on. I think a lot of these guys are just completely in the dark as to why they're there, what they're meant to be doing, what the goal is, and I think that's probably a contributing factor in why their morale seems so damn poor.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you and I were both in, the United States military, and your leadership knows that given an information vacuum is the worst thing that you can do for soldiers. Because then they come up with their own ideas and it's always going to be worse. So, you know, again, this is showing that opposite perspective from the way that we operate our military in the West versus the way that Russian doctrine operates their military, and the differences in the country of Russia. So you have to really take into account that where we've found that information is vitally important to our troops at the lowest level, they hold that information back from their troops, and it does cause issues, as we're seeing, where their troops aren't communicating. It's not going top to bottom and bottom to top. It's getting stalled at different command levels, and all of that in the fog of war, essentially, or in a dynamic and changing battle space, means that you're going to lose people that you shouldn't.
Thanks.
Sorry, I was catching up on some DMs. Go ahead and let Raphius talk.
Hey, thank you guys. I had a question for all of you about travel to Europe and what you guys thought of that. Because, I mean, not in the sense like, I don't think that there's going to be an attack on Germany or anything like that anytime soon. But just in terms of, the general condition of Europe, what do you guys, I would like to hear your thoughts, Patrick, Grammar, on non-essential.
COVID is a bigger problem than anything else.
What was that, John?
I said that there shouldn't be any problem because the biggest problem in Europe is a COVID or coronavirus. That's the only problem you can have. Europe is a nice place, and you have no problem with the security issues to come into any part of Europe except Ukraine. That's all what I think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the only sort of issue might be like some delays with people trying to get out of Ukraine, possibly traveling to or through certain countries in Europe, including maybe Germany. Just depends. But I wouldn't see there being, basically, I wouldn't see like somebody needing to cancel plans or anything like that. Go ahead, Patrick.
I wouldn't necessarily plan a trip to Moldova or Georgia, but other than that, you should probably be fine. I tend to agree with William and Grammar and John. This is probably just, it's going to be fairly isolated to Ukraine. I wouldn't go to Belarus either, but I think pretty sure that goes without saying.
Yeah, unless like you somehow get a one-way ticket to punching Lukashenko in the face. Definitely take that up.
Yeah.
But if I was going to go to Eastern Europe right now, I'd definitely buy the extraction insurance.
Yeah. He's not wrong. I mean, if you're a high-profile figure, I don't know what you do for a living, K&R, if your company covers it, that might not be the worst idea, depending on where you're going to be.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The reason I was asking is just because I've been speaking to people in Berlin, journalists mostly, and they're all kind of, a bunch of them had like, first of all, they said that the influx of refugees is very dramatic. And, one of them was actually moving out of her house so that a Ukrainian family could live in her apartment. Another one was talking about how they're like just in case stockpiling food and making an exit plan for if things get bad. I mean, I suppose I think that they're maybe overreacting a little bit because they're particularly, I mean, given the history of World War II, they're, um, I mean, so much of the way we look at World War II looks at how people could have left at a certain time and they didn't. And so then of course we all know what happened after that. And so they're a little they that gives them a particularly sort of maybe a pessimistic view or about like the fact that things won't get better, they'll just get worse. So anyway, so that's why I thought I'd ask you guys. But thank you so much for your feedback.
To add a note on that, I have an exfil plan when I go to the grocery store. So having a plan to get out if something goes wrong, I think is a great idea regardless.
Yeah, but I'm not military, so I usually don't think of exit plans. But I understand. I understand what you're saying. So yes.
I'm totally ordering your book finally. I keep forgetting to, and I'm doing that right now.
Oh, mine?
That's
Hell
okay.
no, not yours. I'm just kidding. Yes,
Okay.
yours too.
It is actually for the German launch of the book, and
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm still kind of on the fence as to what I will do.
Like feeling comfortable, and yeah, I can imagine it's kind of just anything right now kind of feels like, oh my god, just that we've all been through a lot like the last
it's
years.
crazy because the pandemic is just finally gotten to a level where it's, I mean, somewhat manageable, and then now we have this conflict and it just seems kind of very intense, all of it put together. So yeah, but yeah, and thank you so much for your kind words about the book. So thank you.
You're welcome. Definitely, when and if you do go, be safe. And everybody check out her book and check out William's book because they're awesome and they have books and everybody should love books. And if you don't, then I don't know what to tell you. They do have awesome books. They're awesome people too.
Thank you. Dang it. That was really nice.
I know. Ew. Like, feels. Ew. Ew. Hold on. I'm going to try sending somebody an invite real quick.
Hey, Patrick, do we have anybody else waiting to ask questions?
Yeah, me. Where are you at, Patrick? I think I have a few speaker requests. So if you've missed somebody's speaker request and you haven't already DM'd me, if you have, go ahead and DM me again.
Well, that was quick. Go ahead, Edgar.
Hey, so just like everybody, thanks for holding these. It's been good. It's been good to feel like there's a source to actually listen to the information. But I asked to come just because I saw Richard and I looked at his profile, and he created his profile in February 2022, and he was very pro-Hungarian, spreading kind of a little bit of propaganda. So I just wanted to clear that out. That he kind of joined just to spread a kind of that message because that's what he did his profile for. So I just wanted to clear that out.
Exactly. So I'm from Finland, and the main thing I wanted to say to this group that the Hungarian Richard, was it? The picture he painted of Ukraine wasn't the picture that we have in Finland, and Finland does have unsuppressed.
Sorry, I accidentally hit the mute button. My bad. Continue.
Okay. So Finland press is supposed to be one of the most free in the whole world. So I would imagine that the picture we get out of Europe should be quite objective. Of course, money talks everywhere, but still. And if you look the things in Hungary and Eastern Europe from Finland, well, the right populism is everywhere in States and Europe and everywhere. But in Europe, I suppose the most far-right populism has been in Hungary and Poland. And the Richard, what he said about the suppression of beating of people, so those talks hasn't reached Finland. So that's why I agreed, Edgar, that it really didn't sound so objective at all. I would say that was more like sounded more like Kreml or Luhansk Donetsk propaganda. But since I haven't been down there myself, so of course mistakes and bad things happens everywhere. So there might be some isolated cases, of course. Couldn't go right and left out of the road. But yeah, I suppose the most different, I mean, the difficult thing for Russians has been that, like somebody said about the friendship of Ukrainian and Russian history, that the Russians probably thought quite a bit that they would go there like cream, so that they would be flagged in. Only missing was that they didn't have the orchestra marching in front of the column like in Winter War in Finland, but that proved to be wrong. The Ukrainians did fight, and that's surprised the Russians. And then again, the convoy has been through the roads after they've reached the air superiority, more than less or more, and it seems that the Russian they spent half a year in front of Ukraine, so I would imagine that everybody knew where they are and where they were going. So I think that's just a Russian propaganda that everybody has told, that you tell everybody if you're captured that you didn't know that you're in Ukraine.
If you're finished, might say something.
I think I had my hand up.
Okay.
It's Queen here from.
No, sorry, did you get everything I told you? No, I missed something.
No, I heard you.
I'm gonna let them. I was assuming they had responses, so let them speak first.
Patrick, it's Queen from the previous space. This is just my other account because I'm also in Walter's space. I did send you a DM just whenever you have time. I have a wider question for everybody.
For Rafia, you're welcome to Europe. I wouldn't. There's no reason why you wouldn't come to Europe at the moment, but of course not to Ukraine and perhaps Belarus.
Rafia, I'm not sure if it makes you feel better, but I'm actually traveling to the Balkans in July and France. So I haven't changed my flights. I'm not sure if that makes you feel better or worse, but yeah, for what it's worth. I have a general question for, I guess, how do you, we see, I mean, Richard, you know, I think he was a helpful example of people's being indoctrinated, you know, and someone mentioned before how he had a different profile and then he, you know, that evolved, and you kind of like, you can see how somebody becomes, I guess, radicalized. What does the panel think in terms of, and I don't even mean by on a state level, but on an individual level, how do you unwind that indoctrination in someone, if that makes sense? I'd be really interested to hear your guys' opinion from all the speakers. How do you do that?
That's a very good question. I think William might be pretty good about answering this, but John, do you have ideas?
Actually, not regarding this question, what asked by Queen, whatever I know with her by that name. There's something what I want to say, actually, that I believe that some of the European statesmen were under Putin's payroll. For example, Mr. Orban, Mr. Milanovic from Croatia, Mr. President of Slovenia, and several else. Their reaction at the very first beginning of the conflict were very strange. And I believe that that European Union actually put a lot of strength over their heads to keep them in the line, and suddenly some of them changed their stories 180 degrees. That's one of the things I believe that has happened so far, and I don't know what will happen. For example, this Mr. Dodik that Queen's mentioned before, he's definitely under Russian control, and he's a Russian puppet. And I believe that European Union and NATO has to do something to eliminate that threat as soon as possible, because Bosnia is in the belly of Europe. If you look at the map, you can see that that's only a half-hour flight from capital Sarajevo to Italy, and I believe that no one wants to have Putin or Putin's puppet powerful in that area. Okay, that's something what I wanted to say. Maybe that I'm not the best. Sorry for my bad English, because I do not have a lot of chance to speak in English. And sometimes I'm trying to find the best possible word, and it is not easy. Thank you.
No, you're doing very well. It's very clear.
Don't be so nice to him. That's my friend, and he's always mean to me.
Oh, well, in that case, wow, you should really start reading more English books. Listen to English TV. Like, really immerse yourself in the language, dude. Come on. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, he
actually
knows.
I was in the military training. I had military training from United States Air Force, actually. Something,
I'm
but it
surprised
was
you can
almost
say anything other than shit, damn, F word, like all the guys.
it was 20 something years ago.
You're doing really good. I'm really impressed with how much you remembered. That's the last nice thing I'm going to say to you publicly. I'm joking. I think, jokes aside, it's a, you know, he brings up a good point where I will tie it into my previous point where, for example, I posted something on my Twitter where we see Serbian propaganda, the regime media went to the Donbass region and interviewed the Russian population there and talked about, and, you know, just people on the street, and the people on the street all go on and on about how, you know, Russia was weak and couldn't help Serbia when NATO bombed Yugoslavia, but now Russia is strong, and, you know, Russia is led by a strong leader, and Putin, and on and on and on, right? So all that then gets broadcast on the regime media in one half of Bosnia, and then now you have, Serb ultranationals going out on the street and with pro-Putin Serbian waving around Russian Empire flags, right, and painting the Z on the street. So it's like, it goes back to my question: how do you break through that? I know I'm asking a huge question, but and I understand that, like, I understand that we can't, I can't take RTRS off TV in Bosnia, right? But we do have other platforms, and the things is, like, Richard was, I know he was kind of very right wing, but it was a useful example to speak to someone who is so heavily indoctrinated, where if you put the facts before him, it just doesn't make any difference. Like, I had someone in the DMs yesterday sent me a link of a graph showing the population of Ukrainians and saying, see how there's 20 million Ukrainians that just disappeared in 2012. And my background is law and finance and banking. I know how to read a graph. And the thing is, on his graph, there is no 20 million people missing. And you can't, like, the logic fails in that situation. So I find it very hard. I would like to kind of save some of these people from themselves, from, I suppose, drinking this Kool-Aid as much as possible every time I interact with any of them, like with any of these ultranationals, because they all start to sound really the same. Like, whether it's Hungarian ultranationals or Serbian ultranationals or Russian ultranationals, like, it's all starts to come the same. But I'm just really, when they stopped acting, when all logic is suspended, where do you go from there? Does that make sense? If anyone has any ideas, just please chime in or DM me.
So, I don't know if anybody was gonna speak, but for me, it's hard when they don't understand logic or they can't read a graph. But what I've noticed is facts, confidence, and conviction. Like, it's really important to when I've like addressed them, and I usually go a little bit more confrontational than most people, because I just try to shock them out of it a little bit with, okay, that's wrong. So, like, no, what you're saying is wrong. These are the facts. Because they're usually the people that are pushing and trying to impose this propaganda on them are always, they use very confident language, so they don't doubt what they're talking about. So when you confront them, you also got to be very confident with your facts, and I've noticed that, at least in social media, as I've done that, I've seen profiles start slowly and steadily stop the rhythm at which they spread propaganda. So they start doubting a little bit more. So that's at least that's what I've tried to do, and it sometimes works depending on the person. But I don't know if that answers, or it's just a comment.
No, thanks for the comment. I'm just looking for any ideas. I've totally, because again, we in Bosnia, we have a secession / security crisis on our hands. And I don't say that to sound alarmist or like I'm wanting anything, but it's just unfortunate facts that because we have increase in EU4 troops coming in. There's a lot of activity. So, plus it's an election year, and I would like to, because ultimately, in Bosnia, ultimately this path of secession is going to it's not the same as Ukraine. The Serb nationalists in Bosnia are not Russia. They have none of that military force behind them. So ultimately, this ideology is leading these people to death and the economic destruction. As much as possible, I would like to unwind some of that crazy, for lack of a better term. I'm just looking for ideas, really, because I've never really, my whole entire background is being an athlete and law and finance, so I have no skills in these kind of like social issues, if that makes sense. So thanks. If anyone else has any ideas, please chime in.
I don't know. I come at this from a more American standpoint, where nationalism doesn't quite mean the same thing as it does in a European context. And I inherently, I don't see anything wrong with being proud of your country. It's when they take it to a degree that says, okay, now I must inflict violence on others because of my country simply for existing. And we get a little bit of that in the States, not so much, thankfully. Or at least what we do get, they're generally regarded as wackos, as well they should be. The best propaganda usually has a kernel of truth, in my experience. And if you take that kernel of truth and then you lead them out of it, out of the propaganda portion, I found that some of them actually do start thinking for themselves. So if you say, fact X, yeah, that's true. Fact X is absolutely true. But here's where they lied to you. And here's how I can show you they lied to you. And I want you to go do your own research. Go look at it for yourself. I promise you, I'm not lying to you, but just in case I am, I want you to go and do this for yourself. Go look at what I'm telling you, see if you can confirm it. And just kind of get them thinking that, maybe the world isn't quite the way they've been led to believe it is. And, sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. I am not a psychologist, so please, dear God, don't anybody, try this and be like, well, that guy Patrick Fox on Twitter told me to do this. But now just kind of breaking through the shell of their worldview sometimes and just saying, look, here's what actually happened here. And I forget who was speaking just now, but as they said, initially do it with facts. Certainly do it with facts. Say, okay, no, here's where they factually lied to you, and I can prove it to you. Because that's what kind of breaks the ice for them.
Thanks for that. That's really helpful, because actually I have an example today. I spoke to a girl who was in a different Twitter space where she's Serb nationalist and she lives in RS entity, and she kind of went in on me, and which is fine, but the comment you made about like breaking through that shell, I really felt that where they live in this shell of it's like an ice wall, and you have to repeat things again and again and again, and it's very difficult. Like, for example, I kept repeating, my dad is Serbian, so I have a Serbian name, and therefore, I have the right to identify as Serbian. I identify as Bosnian, but that aside, Serbian is one of my ethnic groups, and she kind of kept saying, she basically denied that my name was my name, kind of thing, which is not that it offended me, but I was just sort of sat back and I thought, oh wow, like this is how strong this propaganda is, where you kind of deny straight facts, like it's I'm not really explaining this very well, but it's just very, very hard to break through that shell. But I think that just that position that you have of like, here's that this fact is true, but here's where the rest of it is a lie, I think that would be really helpful. Thanks, Patrick.
Sure, Quinn. Appreciate
it. Propaganda and how to say is actually not enough good word to explain the state of the mind of the people that are on the process that has happened here for 40 years, honestly, in the Balkans. It's really impossible to explain to someone who is not from this area what is really going on. But the main thing is that the most important thing that propaganda does is actually dehumanization. Each side tries to dehumanize other side. We have seen that during the World War II, or actually before the World War II in Germany, that Jews were dehumanized to German people, and when you put that picture in the head of the normal people, of your friends or whoever, you get results as they were in Germany before World War II and during the World War II. What they have done to Jewish people in that period. Actually, problem is that propaganda here made a lot of people to think that way, that the other side is actually not worthy to live, and that actually they do good things to kill or to expel people from the other side, from their homes, and to kill them, and whatever they have done so far. And I'm afraid that narrative is still alive here and still very strong here in the Balkans. And that is why, for me as a Bosnian, it's very important to find a way that my country becomes the member of the European Union or NATO, and to get enough time to erase that narrative from the heads of people in the area. I didn't say that that any side is not guilty, but I believe that all sides are not the same guilt. They don't have the same level of guilt to carry on. But that's something what propaganda does. Hungarians are, as I said before, are very, very close to us, and they try to be involved as much as possible in our I just cannot understand why they do that, but whatever, they do it. Find the world. It starts with an M. Oh my God! I just can't find the word. Okay, whatever. Thank you.
Okay, Ali, I know you have a question for. I'm going to call you Queen. Still.
Yeah, hi everyone. I was actually wondering, now that we have so many Bosnians on the feed, if we could discuss some of the impact on the Bosnian-Serbian relationship and Russia, and kind of what's going on in Republika Srpska, because I have not personally heard a lot, and I've been very interested to hear what's going on in the public opinion and media, that kind of stuff. So if any of the Bosnians have any info on that, I'd appreciate it.
Should I take this?
Yes,
sure. Okay. So I'm not sure what you know about the political setup, this political structure in Bosnia, but I just look really quickly. Bosnia is politically, well, socially too, but politically divided in a political ethno-apartheid. Bosnia is made up of two entities. One is the Federation, the other is Republika Srpska. I'm sure you know that. Bosnia has a tripartite presidency. Since last year, Dodik, who is the Serb member of that tripartite presidency, has pretty much been obstructing state institutions, passing laws through his entity's parliament to pull out of state institutions, legally committing an attack on the constitution, and in every sense except the rhetorical, paving a way for a secession. So that is kind of the background. recently, since the Ukraine invasion, Dodik has had a meeting with Lavrov, and the Russian embassy in Sarajevo made this announcement. They basically, there is an agreement with Lavrov and Dodik to, well, we don't know the exact details, but one exists between Putin, Lavrov, and Dodik. Yesterday, the tripartite member presidency met, where Dodik wanted to talk about recognition of the two new republics in Ukraine as new countries, which of course had no support from the tripartite presidency. I'm summarizing a lot here because Bosnian politics and Balkan politics in general is really complicated, so I'm just going to wait for you to have like clarifying questions before I go into further details, because it's a lot. Essentially, legally, what Dodik is doing, what we have in Bosnia, we have very weak state institutions because they're being sabotaged within from extreme ultra-nationalistic forces, from Serb ultra-nationalist forces in Bosnia, and to some extent from Croat ultra-nationalist forces as well. And also, key fact here that it's a election year for Bosnia, right? And also Dodik has been involved with several corruption affairs. Some of his key people had now been sanctioned by America. We have the Capitol in the US, the Senate reacting by passing resolutions about supporting Bosnia's sovereignty and integrity, sanctioning corruption, increasing AFOR and NATO presence in Bosnia. Today we have new troops coming into Bosnia as, let's call it, a reaction to everything that's going on. So the general political consensus is that this situation could be used will be used to attempt a secession by Republika Srpska, which would unfortunately plunge the country back into civil war. You with me so far? Do you have any clarifying questions? Because I said a lot.
May I add something to that?
Just wait a sec. Let her just ask just before you add. Go ahead.
No, that was actually really, really great. And I know there's someone else who's up as a speaker right now who'd probably have some good info to add. So I'd like to hear everyone else's thoughts too, especially those from the region.
May I add something that can actually put some light on the picture that Queen just explained? This phase of state destruction actually started at the moment when the Bosnian government decided to stop selling of the so-called state-owned forests in Republika Srpska. Actually, our constitution court actually made decision that all that type of the land belongs to the state, not to the entities. Why is that important for the Dodik and his clique in the Republika Srpska? A year ago, he actually sold the state-owned bonds on the market in London. Most of the buyers were his friends, and he promised them a lot of interest on those bonds. And actually, Republika Srpska doesn't have money to pay off interest and those bonds to their friends, and he is in the panic because I believe that some of those friends are actually criminals, and some of them want to get their money or his head. That's the one. Actually, all this nonsense that we have this year started with that the decision of the Constitution Court regarding the state-owned forests, and after that we have hell here. And meanwhile, High Representative Mr. Insko actually imposed a law that actually bans, how to say in English,
denying genocide.
denying
Our
genocide. Thank you.
High
Thank you.
Representative in Bosnia passed a law that he
Yes.
can, because of our system, that bans denying Srebrenica genocide. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, basically, that law is if someone denies the genocide, any genocide, including the genocide of Jews in Europe, is against the law, and politicians in the Republika Srpska actually use that to weaponize own people and everybody against the Bosnia as a state. But that is not the reason. The reason is the fact that they cannot sell any state-owned forests to cover their debts, actually, and it is. Regular people believe that is because Insko's law. No, that is because they cannot fulfill their financial obligations, and they.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll just clarify just a little bit. Yes, John's right. The RS entities under severe economic pressure, a lot of debt that they can't deal with right now. The state property is, who owns state property is actually listed in the Bosnia's constitution, like any other country. RS politicians have a very, let's say, unique, creative way of interpreting the constitution that really only they have, that they feel that state property is owned by the entity, which it isn't. And they also have a narrative of the state constitutional court being against them and corrupt and invalid body, and there should be no foreign judges and there should be no foreign high representative in Bosnia and all of that, basically. I think Game wants to talk. Game, go ahead.
Jim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for Mike, and thanks Queen for letting me talk. I just want to add a couple of things here. You guys are talking maybe from perspective of being from Bosnia. I'm from Croatia, but I have some relatives over there as well, so I'll know a little bit about it. And one thing which I'm not hearing here, and may be important for everybody listening here to understand situation in Bosnia, is that Bosnia is a country of 3 different nations. Queen said that we have that over there they have 2 entities, basically, like Republika Srpska and basically Bosnia Federation. But Bosnia Federation is consisting of another 2 entities, which are Bosniaks and Croats, and this is where you have to start building the story from.
Just a sec. Just to clarify. Sorry, we don't have 3 nations. We have 3 ethnic groups that are characterized in the constitution as constituent people. So there are no 3 entities.
Okay, maybe
just to clarify.
Wrong choice of words. But if you talk to them, they're all going to, you call it like this, but they will call themselves nations as well. And that is the basis of the problem, because this is how they perceive themselves, as like kind of independent nations. But while I believe what Queen just said, that they're basically whatever you call them, I'm not expert in that kind of
constituent people.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
okay, fine. Now, the problem comes that if you go into the genesis of the war in 90s, was that those, if I call them my way, nations, so Croats, Bosniaks, and Serbs, there is 3 different religions behind as well. And this is where everything is becoming a big mixture of problems, in a sense of that if you compare 3 of them in one way or the other, they either don't like each other for whatsoever reason, religiously or nationally. They, at the same time, they cooperate with each other. So if you go back to 90s and the constitution of Bosnian part of federation, it was a result of attempt of Croats and Muslims to actually fight off Serbs who were trying to conquer whole of the Bosnia, which at that moment was for me looking as a for a Croatian president at that time who was massively supporting Croats in Bosnia, and Bosnian president Izetbegovic, who was basically looking to protect their interest, to actually create a whole country to be a federation of Bosniaks and Croats, and probably in their mind being quite against Serbs. They were hoping that they're going to potentially even get them out. I'm not saying that this is the truth behind, but you know, that could be a genesis of it. And now you have this entity which is mixed, and in this entity today, for example, and I'm not talking about Serbs right now, I'm going to talk in a minute, you have like kind of quarrel between the two because Croats, after many years, are unhappy with their how did you call them, constituency rights, and being, for example, overvoted by Bosniaks, and having their, because Bosniaks are of course looking as a, in my view, in a right way, as a state of people who are living over like kind of, and
just to clarify,
Okay.
something. Just clarify.
Queen, are you going to do that, or I'm going to do that?
I'll clarify. Just to clarify.
Okay,
Let's refrain from calling all Croats, all Bosniaks, all Serbs. So not all Croats are unsatisfied. One ultra-nationalistic Croatian political party who is under extreme pressure from corruption scandals, who is losing political support, is unsatisfied. So to say all Croats and three nations, that's part of the propaganda narrative. And I just
can I in that case confront you and further clarify that my part of the family is Croats who are not nationalists, who are basically more on the side of what is this guy Komšić, and I don't know what rule he's, but they are against what is happening. So you cannot simply say that only nationalists are like that, because there are even, you know, my niece over there and my cousins are saying simply, you know, we cannot run our business because of that. So they are not happy. Not that they are pushing for this criminal guy.
Hey guys, no. We're gonna follow raised hands.
Okay, let's stop arguing. Okay, let's stop arguing. Let's try to put facts on the table. Let's try to put. Right? Okay, let me try to put some facts. Queen. Just let me try to put some facts.
It's Mladen's turn. It's not your turn. It's Mladen's turn. Mladen, you have.
No, it's not Mladen's turn. I didn't finish. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, Jim. Actually,
you're doing exactly what you're doing on daily basis in Bosnian politics. You don't like what you say.
Let me say something. I have to say something. Honestly, Mladen, can I say something before you start?
Grandma, can you make me co-host and mute everybody, please?
Okay, so let me say something real quick. This is what I can't read about. Like, I have read about the Balkans and Eastern Europe and just the complex nuances that, as an American, yes, I have strong family roots in Hungary and Slovakia and just all over Eastern Europe, Poland. Freaking, I was just about to pull up 23andMe I found out I have an ancestor from Somalia. Like, never knew that, right? But I cannot read about, like when you guys sat there and go, are you going to tell him or am I going to tell? Like, whether or not what you were going to tell him was right, whatever. Like, I'm not getting into like any of the sides here. Just that was like a connection that you guys have from your side of the perspective that I would never be able to read about. Like, I could read about these two people out of this perspective. And it's kind of like, wow, technology is really kind of aiding in some things. I don't know. But I mean, as long as everything is cool, I'm kind of just going to stay out of this and like listen. So if somebody needs me to mute everyone to get a point in, or if I hear everyone start yelling, I'll go ahead and mute everyone. But like, as long as we're cool. Did you just mute me? Really? I gave you, yeah, that's what I know. It's getting to your head already. Okay, no, but yeah, as long as everyone's cool, like, I'll just kind of chill if that's fun and listen.
So can I ask you something, Grammy? Can I
Yes.
continue where I stopped, or we are going to do it in a way that I will be muted because I so
You're gonna get me in
you
trouble.
have just witnessed a typical way of the things being done over there, you know. And I'm
Okay,
gonna tell you how neutral I am.
maybe Allie, can you? How did you say his name? Mladen.
Yeah, I really have been wanting him to come out and speak to this, just to give some background to everyone. He's very intelligent on this topic, and the reason why I personally am not an ignorant American, is we got to study, unfortunately, the horrors of Srebrenica and the genocide in Bosnia with him in part, and I think he might be able to provide some calming information to everyone, especially because, we're getting into these really high level conversations. But I think anyone listening, like, who hasn't had the opportunity or the privilege to go and study these things or know about them more just because of their education systems in their countries, and unfortunately the West tends not to pay a lot of attention to these things, I think maybe it would be good to give more of a basic overview and conversation as well for people listening who might not be able to necessarily follow the intense conversations and kind of discussion we're getting into right now. So
Yeah.
Mladen, if you want to jump
Sorry,
in.
I muted people because I was actually having a problem with my mic on my other device. And yeah, I want to hear from Mladen. And just, Grandma, can you make me a co-host again on this profile? My apologies. Mladen, go ahead.
Hi guys, can I talk? Can I start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so not to waste time, I've been practicing for 20 years to give you the Balkan drama in 5 minutes. So let me try. Is that all three sides have an agenda. And that why am I talking about three sides and not about individuals? Because this is a matter of high politics. This is a matter of who controls the land, who writes the constitution. These are the things over which wars are fought. So if you have issues over which wars are fought, the only kind of groups that have constitution making capacities are those who can field soldiers on the ground. And in this respect, I can and I have to roughly agree with the Croatian guy who was talking about, Croats feel this, Bosniaks feel this, Serbs feel this, because when push comes to shove, they proved, at least in the past 30 years, they are the ones who can put soldiers in the field to fight for whatever they want to fight. So I can give you like an example. I know a girl whose father was a Bosniak from a communist family. Mom was a Serb from a Chetnik family, which was like two opposing sides in World War II, but they didn't care. The love was more important. And during the war of the 1990s, her Muslim Bosniak dad was arrested by Croatian troops. And in order to avoid that, he sort of tried to enlist in Croatian army. Why am I saying that? Because it did not matter what he wanted. There were three major armies fighting, and others had to pick sides. And when we talk about constitution and who controls the political process, the sides that fight are the only ones that count. Now, how are they trying to cheat? Croatian guy was talking about how Bosniaks are now using their demographic majority to take the advantage and outvote Croats who are in large and strong minority. But and he cites like the constitution and how that's not okay. But don't forget, in the beginning of the war, the major Croat and Bosniak parties, Muslim parties, had no problem outvoting Serbs, who were then in minority compared to the Croats and the Bosniaks. So whenever there's a possibility to present your case, to further your ethnic agenda or your political agenda in the name of democracy and rule of majority, people will do that, and then by doing so they invoke support from democratic West. So everybody has some, something in the closet that they're trying to hide, So when Serbs were proposing in the end of Yugoslavia that Yugoslavia should be reformed so that majority should rule and one person should have one vote, that proposal was flat out rejected by both Bosniaks and Croats. And then when now
Sorry,
we have
Mike,
Bosnia.
Can I just ask you a question while you're
Sure,
on this topic?
Sure.
And I'm definitely gonna let you talk. Like, I'm not this
No, please, please.
rule, one vote as a method of democratic voting system in principle. In principle, do you support that?
Well, that's the point. I do support it, but here is the question of disingenuity. Why that rule was not appropriate for Yugoslavia, but
because
now in Bosnia.
That country
Okay,
stopped that country stopped existed when Slovenia.
I'm going to enforce a hardcore don't interrupt people as they're speaking rule.
Actually, that is not okay what you do. Because this should be a discussion, Mr. Mladen.
But it's not. It can't be a discussion.
Just let me. Okay, you have interrupted me several times. You have interrupted me several times. I couldn't give an answer to Mr. Jim, and now I cannot do it to Mr. Mladen.
Because it's not your turn to talk. Okay, so please just respect or just leave.
Okay, and you hijacked it. You hijacked this one. This space. It is not up to you to. Okay, I really like you. I really like you. We agree on a lot of things, but you hijacked this.
Okay, please let Mladen finish. Mladen, go ahead.
Okay, I'm finishing really quick now. So what I'm trying to say is this: the fact that one side wants democratic majority rule in the name of modern democracy and all that, when it fits that side, is being weaponized by everyone at the same time. Now, because in the 1990s, and we can get into this complexity later, the Serbs were on the receiving end of the Western perspective on who were the bad guys, and in a large part, in large segments, well deserved. The point remains the same: how you organize a political system in which whoever is minority is going to shout against rule of majority, but those who are in majority will demand rule of majority when they are majority. But when they're not in the majority, they will cry foul. So because of the 1990s and the fact that Bosnian Serbs were against what United States and Europe wanted, all of a sudden we have explosion of pro-Russian sentiments among Bosnian Serbs, which led to one peculiar thing. Bosnian Serbs largely have lost the capacity to articulate their position in a language that is understandable to Western audiences, because they feel victimized, they feel their victims were not respected, that the crimes committed against them were not punished, and they have this basic conclusion: we have to wait for Russians to come back. Nothing else works. There is no point doing anything else. I personally talked to some of the leaders of Bosnian Serbs, I mean, not top leaders, but some people around them, and I asked them one simple thing. Look, guys, I'm bringing American students to Bosnia, and you claim all the time that it's World War II and genocide against Serbs that largely explains why you reacted the way you reacted. Now let me ask you one question. Where is the museum in which I can take American students to see undisputed genocide against Serbs in Bosnia? For 10 years, I'm asking the same question. Nothing is being done. The answer: if they want to know the truth, they will know it. This loss of any idea of how to communicate with the West is one of the major problems of understanding what's really going on in Bosnia. So I'll conclude with this. Thank you very much.
Mladen, if you can stick around, like stay. I just want to chime.
May I speak now? Finally,
no, John. It's not your turn, so please stop.
it's actually my turn. I'm keeping my hand all the time, and the other hand actually okay. This is not.
Okay, so I've had to remove him from the space because it was absurd. I need to clarify a couple of things. Mladen talked about. I'm just going to clarify the legal part of this. The point about voting in Bosnia. There are two entities, and the system is complex. There's two entities. In the federation is one voting entity, and the Republika Srpska is one voting entity. Meaning, depending on where you are registered, you can vote depending on where you are registered, so where you live. In the federation, which is mainly Croat and Bosniak in terms of ethnic group structure, people have the right to vote for 2 members of presidency. So when the idea of and presidency members have to come from all 3 constituent peoples. So a Serb president, a president from Serb nationality, and a Croat and a Bosniak. The system is complicated, so I'm just trying to clarify some things. When Bosniaks vote for a Croat member, when they cast a vote at the ballot for a Croat member in the federation, they are doing so according to the constitution and the electoral system that everybody agreed to. They're not imposing their will legally on anyone. Mladen, can you just mute your mic just for a second because we have a lot of background noise? Thank you. They are not imposing the will of the majority in a legal sense upon anybody. This is what is in our constitution, what is in our electoral laws. This is 100% legal. That's one thing. Second thing, as somebody who is me personally, a Bosnian Serb, I really don't appreciate having us all cast in exactly the same political, let's say, we are all this XYZ political narrative. And most importantly, we don't have a ethnic leader. None of the constituent peoples have an ethnic leader. I just want to clarify that legal point. So there is no imposing the will of the majority in a legal sense in the federation because that is what is allowed by the law. I think Harish Gupta was here. Next, Harish, go ahead. Harish?
I'm sorry, was I supposed to answer or that was it supposed to comment?
I was just, if you want to, you can comment, but I was actually just going to give somebody else a chance to talk, and then I was going to come back to you if you can stick around, if you don't mind.
Yeah, can I just second while we are on the topic?
Sure, go ahead.
So when Dayton Peace Accords were concluded in 1995, in the end of the war, the Constitution was part of it. I mean, it was one of the annexes. So the Constitution said.
Sorry, just one sec. The Dayton Peace Accord was the annex to the Constitution. The Constitution of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina predates the Dayton Peace Accord. Very big difference. But go ahead.
Wait a second. The current constitution of Bosnia, right? The one that I'm talking about, the one that proposes 3 members of presidency. That's the one we're talking about, right?
Yes, but the Dayton Peace Accord is a part of our constitutions. There are other parts of the constitution that apply.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just saying we are talking about the constitution that is valid now, right?
Yes.
Yes, so this constitution was adopted in the end of the war, right? This document
No. See, Dayton Peace Accord is an amendment to the Constitution. Okay, that's a very big difference. It is an amendment. I feel like a lot of problems we have is because people have very, very flawed understanding.
Let's take it. Let's take it. It is. I mean, amendment to the Constitution. It's valid. Right? It's the law of the land.
Please be quiet and let him talk. Okay, just go
so
ahead.
I think if we're gonna get going off of what he said with the whole clarifying it down into 5 minutes or so. We can't get into all the intrinsic nuances and the exact specifics. So, I mean, just personally getting like an overview.
No, go ahead, Martin. Go ahead.
So I'm just trying to say the rules that are, the countries run by now were shaped in the end of the war. Now you can call it any way you want, but in the end of the war, when the rule was adopted that presidency of Bosnia was going to be composed of one Croat, one Serb, and one Bosniak, now it's a matter of interpretation whether that could have meant a Croat elected by Bosniaks or a Croat elected by Croats. So the point is that
I'm sorry, that's not sorry. I'll let you finish, but
no.
that was never part of it.
The thing is, I agree
that's
with you.
Just
absolutely.
narrative. That's just
no.
Sorry.
No.
So go ahead.
It's okay. The point is this: the black letter on white paper says Croat, doesn't say anything else. So you're absolutely right. The law says what you say it says. However, Croatian party now is disputing that because it goes against the spirit of the constitution. Now, let's look at it from the other side. The changes to the constitution and the jurisdiction that was gradually taken from entities and given to the country of Bosnia, those changes were introduced in the name of the spirit of the constitution. So the role of the international community was such that it strengthens the central power of the Bosnian state in the name of the spirit of the constitution. Now, here is the problem. When do we apply the spirit of the constitution, and when do we apply the black letter on white paper, what is said? If
is
we
that a
apply
question for me? Sorry,
no,
is that a question?
Or is that just rhetorical? It's a source of a lot of grievances. Because if you apply black letter on white paper interpretation of constitution, then Republic of Srpska, the Serb entity in Bosnia, would love that. They would love that. Your argument is actually what leaders of Republic of Srpska have been saying for years now. Apply what is written, not what's in the spirit. So you get into really tough spot being almost to the line of Milorad Dodik, the leader of Bosnian Serbs. So that's all from me for now.
Thanks, man. So just to answer your question, when do we apply something to the Constitution and not to the others? When the Constitutional Court decides to do so. The Constitutional Court that is represented by all the constituent peoples, including foreign judges. How they apply that is the ultimate
wait a second.
ruling
A
body.
constituent court, as in, like, do y'all get to elect your judges?
No, a constitutional court. Yes, we do. So that's the thing. It's
Would this be equivalent to our Supreme Court?
Yes. That is the ultimate governing body of your constitution. So what they say about your constitution applies on a state or a federal level is the ultimate ruling authority.
Well,
the
actually,
answer to Vladim's question.
I'm sorry, but this is a question where countries break apart. Okay, so if you see that constitutional court is sometimes using black letter on white paper interpretation and sometimes is using spirit of the law interpretation, you start doubting the court, because where is the principle? Why should we trust the court as if it's a God Almighty who knows the best and we don't know anything? So that is a big problem, and that if that was the other way around, I mean, if the forces were distributed different way, it would have broken the country already. Yugoslav Constitutional Court of Yugoslavia ruled that secessions of some republics were against the constitution. Who cares? The force was on the side of the secessionists. So we did not lose our critical mind and ability to see hypocrisy and double standards on the part of the Constitutional Court, which, by the way, cannot be compared to the US Supreme Court because you have ethnicized court. Ethnicized, 2 Croats, 2 Serbs, 2 Bosniaks, and then you add foreign judges who are always pushing for the centralization of the state. War was fought over that, and I'm afraid that the only thing that is keeping Bosnia now is just the force of the EU and the US together, and not any principle. It's very easy to see that.
To be clear, I didn't mean like it operates like or is like composed like the Supreme Court, but in terms of I guess what
the highest governing body is, I
like
think,
what it's supposed to do in a sense.
Yeah.
Like whereas the Supreme Court, the whole interpreting the final part of the law or whatever, and then we got a whole mess over here with our court. So yeah. Anyway,
the Constitutional Court in Bosnia is the highest constitutional governing body in the country. Laden is right that it's ethnicized. It's also ethnicized by that exact same Dayton Peace Agreement that he's also referring to. So it's not ethnicized because it just fell from the sky like that. It is ethnicized according to amendments in our constitution, which is the Dayton Peace Agreement, like everything else in Bosnia that is unfortunately ethnicized. So, Mladen, stick around, please. I'm going to give the mic to Harshit. Harshit, are you there?
Yes, I am here. My name is Harshit. Thank you for letting me speak. I really wanted to speak to everyone in this group. I raised my query when this group was about Ukraine and about this situation going on in Ukraine, and now this group has shifted to Balkans and etc. But I want to ask something very serious. But like, let me tell you something, okay? My girlfriend is a Ukrainian citizen. She's currently right now in Kiev. I'm in India. She was about to come to me on the 6th of March, which is tomorrow. But on 24th of February, war started and everything fell down into pieces. And now she can't just like come to me. And but now like what she's trying to do, she's just trying to go to some border of like some country, but I can't tell you like which country because of security reasons. Maybe it is like Poland, Romania. Or Romania or Slovakia to India. That visa and here like I can just like like arrest her with UNHCR and everything will be good. Like, can I do it? Like, please, like, if you anybody in this group know something about my question, like, can you please help me? Thank you.
I will definitely look into that. I would assume that she should be able to get to Poland or Romania for sure. I would I think Hungary, Orban's being Orban, don't try Hungary. I think they finally said they're not going to open borders, something. So Poland or Romania, if she can get there, she should be able to get a flight, especially if she's got a visa and stuff like that. I will look into it for sure and see if I can get some definitive answers from both India and Poland or both India and Romania for you. I'll do that in just a minute.
Yes, because you know, like
Can I suggest something?
Yes, please.
Where is your sister in Ukraine right now?
She's my sister. She's my girlfriend. Sorry.
Okay, let me tell you something. Ukrainian Red Cross is already running a program called Restoring Family Links. So if she approached them anywhere where she is, she will be able to get a very detailed information about where she can go and how she can get there, that she's going to get their support. And even in any of the countries, when she comes across the border, wherever she succeeds, she can continue having that service. So the service is called Restoring RFL. You have, let's say, on the border, you're going to have Red Cross point with the RFL people basically providing her with support immediately.
Can you please like DM me this information? I would be really grateful for your help.
Sure, no problem.
And I really, because like, you know, like, please try to understand it once again, because what is happening that she have a visa, which like she got a visa on 23rd of February, and she had this visa. We were celebrating, oh, that congratulations, you have this visa, now you will come to me. And like she was like all preparing for it, and suddenly in the morning she heard some loud explosions, and she just like called me that there are bombs now, and everything in that moment just like completely changed. And now like I can see like in that visa there is nowhere written like the destination from which she will be departing. It is like a destination of arrival is India. Poland is accepting Ukrainian citizens without any kind of like hassle or like something. They just like are accepting Ukrainian citizens. Slovakia is accepting like Ukrainian citizens, and even Romania is accepting Ukrainian citizens. So she just want to like go to these three countries, like whichever will be possible. Because right now it is very very hard to get outside of Kyiv, even because trains are really packed. There can be like there is really big chances of stampede on train and on like train station. So that right now like her main quest is to just get outside of Kyiv. Then she will go to some kind of like some neighboring countries where she can take flight to to India. And because like she don't have anybody in Europe or like somewhere else, because like she just have me. And I really booked this ticket because I thought like like this situation was very getting bad in the Ukraine. I was like watching it all over the news that Russia is like planning to attack is this and that. So I thought, okay, let's have a like book this ticket for 6th of March. And I didn't know like this will be like this, that it would start so soon that all things fell apart. But really, please, any of you, if you can just like try to get some information that can she come from Poland, Slovakia, or Romania to India with her visa, which she is having. Because like when she will go to this Poland, Slovakia, and this Romania, she will be a Ukrainian citizen too. Like she will be having a passport, she will be having everything. And just I just like want to know this. Thank you.
Okay, somebody just messaged me saying that they have a friend in Poland that might be able to get in touch as well. And he DM'd you as well.
Okay.
Point is, like, we'll definitely help. We can help, all of us together. Like, putting aside all of our we're gonna argue, and I mean, shit. If I've got Trump voters like adding me for the past week, and we've been all able to sit together in these spaces and talk about how to help Ukraine, and our politics aren't bothering each other, like, we can all come together and help people. So, wait, he said his DMs are closed. So, okay, if you can open your DMs, at least just for a little
I
bit.
don't know how to. No. My DM are open. Wait, I can't.
Okay, here's what I'll do. I will send you their. If anybody can help him, let me DM me, and I will send the profile links to
How to
him.
open DM
Okay.
now? It's. Wait a second. I don't know.
Can
My
we just
DMs
have
are closed.
non-speakers mute their mics because there's so much background noise in the echo? Edgar, thank you so much. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Hashid.
Okay. Like how to DM? Like how to like open the DM, because I don't know like how to do it, because like I just like never.
You DM me, so it's the same
Yes,
thing.
it is. But I DM'd you. But like as Grammar just told me that like that I need to open my DM, because like people are not able to send me DM.
You have to
And
make your profile unlocked, but your profile is unlocked. So
And
I
it's
think
also dependent on their profile as well.
Yeah.
So that might be. So the easiest thing, I will just send you everybody's usernames who's offering to help in my DMs.
Yes, that would be really great. That would be really great.
if I can
think
just
Edgar was next. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, my DM is open. You can send contact to me, and I will share with you information regarding RFL.
I just wanted to, in case there was any doubt, that or that there's visas usually don't restrict where she's coming from. So if that was one of your questions, she should be able to travel as long as she has a visa to India. It shouldn't matter which country she's traveling from, because she in India's has allowed her to enter the country. So they should let her travel to India once she has a passport and a visa. So it should, in that phase, in that part of the issue, it should be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the main thing right now will just be figuring out if Poland or Romania is specifically looking out to help people from India or anything like that, which I can
No. Like, she's not Indian. She's Ukrainian.
Okay. Oh yeah, you did say she is. Okay.
Yes. She's actually Ukrainian, and I am an Indian citizen, and she's a Ukrainian citizen, and we are in relationship since 2017, and it's like this.
Yeah, we will definitely get this figured out. So the main thing is she's trying to get out of Ukraine and trying to get to India.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll help you out. We got you.
Okay. Thank you. I will turn off my mic now. Okay.
Thanks, Hashid. Edgar, I think you were next, and then Jim, and then Gage. And if after that, I don't remember who. Actually, after that, there was no one with hands up. So if no one puts their hands up, I have some questions from Laden. So Edgar, Jim, Gage. Go ahead, Edgar.
I think my question was back to the situation in Bosnia, and part of it was I'm just picturing how it's all separated. So do you have to do citizens then register with different groups? Because I'm guessing families start marrying in between groups, and their children grow up, and
yeah, go ahead.
In that sense, they gotta. I was just wondering how that worked, because I can see it work in that division. It starts out really well, but with time, as the community grows, and it becomes less separated, and the lines between who's part of each group and kind of blend, and then it seems like it'd be hard. It plays into effect when which groups are which, and I was seeing if y'all could clarify a little bit more about that.
I will jump in on that because my parents' marriage is a perfect example of that. My dad is a Bosnian Serb. My mom is a Bosnian Bosniak. So mixed marriage. I'm from Sarajevo. Before the war, Sarajevo had the highest rate of mixed marriages, something like 30+%. I don't know the exact numbers. These ethnic divisions are they are problematic for a lot of reasons. To answer your question, yes, the lines get blurred. No, we don't get registered. When I was born, on my birth certificate, it doesn't list my ethnic groups. It doesn't make me. It doesn't have my name and then my ethnic groups. Irena Janj is a Serb or Irena Janj is a Bosniak. That doesn't exist. These are social and constitutional social divisions, and that are also represented in our constitution. So we don't vote for ethnic leaders. Ethnic leaders like to make it seem like they are the rulers of all ethnic groups, if that makes sense, in the way that they behave, in their narratives, in ridiculous amounts of generational indoctrination. But I don't vote for the ethnic leader of all Serbs, for example. Like, there is no such election where we elect a Serb that leads all the Serbs, or where I elect a Bosniak that leads all the Bosniaks, if that makes sense. And people do mix. Like, there are no actual formal there are no borders between the entities. There's no border police. There are different entities police, but there are no border police, if that makes sense. Fortunately, the school system is entirely segregated, where you have 2 schools under one roof. And yes, over time, Dayton Peace Accord was supposed to have been and people can argue about this, and I'm more than willing to engage. Dayton Peace Accord was supposed to have been a temporary transition towards a representative united Bosnia. Again, people have other opinions on this, but it was never meant to be a forever situation, if that makes sense, because it's very hard to imagine an apartheid sustaining itself till the end of time. The problem that we have is through incredible amounts of corruption, abuse, indoctrination, our situation is being used to tear the country apart, if that makes sense. This is a very, very complicated issue. As far as geopolitics go, Bosnia is the most complicated. So for anyone that is kind of a little bit lost here, it's not you, it's us. Who was next? Does that answer your question, Edgar, at all? Do you have anything follow up?
Yeah, that answers my question. I definitely need to read more on it. But it's interesting because the leaders always play the divisions to push division to earn more. Yeah, earn more power.
Capitalism. I mean,
so in Bosnia, that what leaders do to push those divisions is just like on steroids, for lack of a better term. That's not a pro term. That's just me trying to give you a visual picture. I think it's Jim, Gage, and then I think Freddie was raising his hand. I'm not sure though. Jim, go ahead.
Just a second. I was trying to send message to Grammar. Nothing to add. Nothing to add from my end for now. Sorry, I'm more focused on the message now. Thank you.
That's okay. Just hang around. Gage and then Freddie. Gage, go ahead.
Hi all. I'm Nicola from Montenegro. Queenie, you're my queen always. Anyways, I wanted to put some context into that what Queenie said. All problem with Bosnia not is some term defined by communists in 1974. Term is constituency of ethnicity or constituency of nations. That term was used by people who signed Dayton Peace Agreement Accord to end the war in Bosnia. Constituency of ethnicity is utter stupidity because it negates very basics of democracy, parliamentary democracy. That term defines the sovereignty of a nation to be upon the ethnic group of that nation. In parliamentary democracies, sovereignty of nation lies on voter, on citizen. So, only way that Bosnia not can be untied is to declare Bosnia a civic state instead of a federation or confederation of ethnicities. That's the only way to fix that problem. Anything else will make us go around in circles. That's all I want to say.
I just want to add, then Igor, you're next. Where the Constitution discriminates, just outright discriminates, is against people like me, for example, where I'm a Bosnian Herzegovinian by nationality. I come from two ethnic groups, but I can't be a candidate to be a president because it's something similar. It's not exact because nothing is exact, but it's very similar to the idea of being biracial in South Africa during the apartheid, where you don't have the same constitutional rights. I don't have those constitutional rights unless I declare myself as either a Bosniak or as a Serb. And this is the kicker, where I don't have to do anything to prove my ethnicity. I just declare myself as one or the other. And I can do so with a Croat ethnicity as well, even though neither of my parents are Croats or my grandparents. So the absurdity of that should be pretty obvious, where my constitution discriminates against me as a citizen, as a citizen, because on these ethnic lines. So I just wanted to add that. I hope Mladen is still with us because I have a question for him.
Just to add, yeah, you can feel yourself discriminated, or you can use it to cheat elections, because no one can say you're not what are you saying use to it be. To
what elections? Cheat elections.
Yeah, cheat
because
elections,
I can
okay.
tomorrow.
No, I didn't
Why?
understand what you were saying. Imagine I'm Bosniak, and I want to vote for Croat president. I can always say that I am Croat. Who can say otherwise, that I'm not? Right? Nationality is a personal feeling, not something you have to prove. Or ethnic. I'm sorry, this is blowing my mind a little bit, just because it's like, again, like I not to sound like the ignorant American, but I'm American.
You're not an ignorant American. This is very complicated. It's not.
Derived by or from to have the borders that were there right then in order to preserve not only like themselves but other nations, like their other groups there, and move forward in peace.
Sorry, Gremlin. I don't want to interrupt you. I just have Nightwalker asking for a mic. I'm trying to add you, but at Nightwalker, I think there's an issue with your Twitter. Can you jump out of the space and then come back in? Because I've tried to give you a mic like 3 times, and just Twitter is not cooperating with me. Just exit the space and please come back and request the mic, and I'll try again. Sorry, go ahead.
What I want to say, without civic state, you can't have one voter, one vote, or one citizen, one vote. You will always have some kind of segregation or discrimination. That's all. That's a fundamental of any parliamentary democracy, right? If you don't have that, you don't have democracy. Simple as that. So unless Bosnia or Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, talking about part of Bosnia that isn't
Republic of Srpska, because it's more likely to become that as a civic state than Republic of Srpska, right? Unless they become a civic state, problem will go on and on and on, and we'll have perpetual problems in Bosnia. That's all.
I agree. I think the Freddie, Raxi, Igor, and then Edgar was next. And then I have questions from Latin. So stick around if you can. Freddie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of buttress Queen's point about Bosnia. Wait, first of all, can you guys hear me?
You're kind of like, I think you're either too close to the mic where it's a bit breathy and it's kind of cutting in.
Okay,
At least
now
for
can
me.
you hear me?
Yeah, that's so much better. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Queen, I just want to kind of buttress your point to an extent. I had, in my master's program, I had Wolfgang Ischinger as one of my teachers, and he was pretty pivotal in the negotiations with Milosevic and the Serbs and the whole ordeal, and Richard Holbrooke. And this was done under a bit of indirect coercion, and for this reason, because they thought they would have further negotiations in the future. And the reasons is it's called the Dayton, of course, because it was in Dayton, but that was next to a massive American Air Force base at Patterson Air Force Base. So it was to reinforce this idea to Milosevic: you really don't have much say in this matter. You can take the best deal.
So it really is that Dayton. I was like, how did they like Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah.
What the? Okay,
no, it's
sorry.
Dayton, the place in America. So what were you buttressing? What was my point that you were buttressing?
About Bosnia, that there would be further negotiations in the future, or this was kind of. Ischinger didn't directly say this, but the idea.
Oh, sorry. Can I just jump really? I meant further progress within Bosnia, not around the Dayton negotiations.
Well, that was my point. Is that this would lead to other things, and that the world works as it does, and we moved on to other things, and it's kind of been in this. I mean, certainly Bosnian society has advanced in some ways and unfortunately regressed in others, and we're kind of this point where these tensions in this tripartite government, and I'm not an expert in this, but I just wanted to talk about the fact of kind of how this all came about in the first place, and how I don't think this was ever meant to be some kind of permanent solution. I don't know what that solution was. I don't think anybody did, but it's clearly not the long-term solution for Bosnia. Whatever it is yet to be determined, I guess, in the end. And I think that's why
that in a different way, but my point was that this wasn't supposed to be a permanent status quo, because no apartheid can ever be a permanent status quo. So what were you going to add to that?
Merely that this system was not meant to be indefinite. That's it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think I made that point before, and maybe I didn't clarify myself. What I said was the way Dayton is structured, it leaves no room for anybody to go anywhere but forward, because there's simply no way out of Dayton without a huge mass scale conflict that, just for the record, I'm against at all costs. I'm absolutely 100% against that. I do not want anybody to die, regardless of their political opinions or whatever. I'm severely against that. So, yeah, just thanks, Freddie. I will give Igor, and then I think Edgar White, and then North Walker. Igor, go ahead.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Sure.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was interesting listening. I'm actually colleagues and friends with Mladen. I'm also a political scientist. And speaking about the system, electoral system, well, it's not quite often in Western democracies that you have one citizen or one person, one vote system. It actually depends on the voting system. So, for example, the system where you equate one citizen with one vote, is not current in Canada or the United States, for example, because you have, or United Kingdom, because you have specific electoral systems. And for example, you have Wyoming, which is a state with 800,000 people that has 2 senators. And you also have California with 30 or somewhat, maybe 40 million people, which also has 2 senators. And then you have the electoral colleges. And you also have the electoral ridings in Canada. So basically the system, one person, one vote, is not applied in a lot of Western democracies. And the specificity of Bosnia and Herzegovina and other countries such as Belgium, Switzerland, previously also Netherlands and other parts of the world, is that they have consociative systems, which between completely metropolitan, atheistic, modernist places like Amsterdam and so on. So basically, it's not something that's a given. So if Bosnia has had to adopt that system in order to stop war, in order to have a compromise between the different ethnic groups, and if you cannot find a better system, then perhaps it's better to keep it. And also just another note, when somebody, I think it was you, Queen, you mentioned means minority rule. Africa, who ruled over Bosnia, because there's absolutely no majority there. Basically, it's 3 constituent nations, and they're all minorities. They're all under 50%. And plus, you also have even smaller minorities. So yeah, it's a pretty complicated system. Sorry, that would be all for me.
Thanks, Igor. Stick around. So just some quick facts about that Igor brought up. Ethnic makeup of Bosnia: 51% Bosniak. This is according to the last consensus. 51% Bosniak, 28% Serb, 15% Croat, and the rest is others, a mixture of other nationalities that I don't. So we do have a majority of an ethnicity, majority being over 50%. Ethnically speaking, we do have a majority. Bosniaks are the majority in Bosnia. That's one. Apartheid I used in the legal, political sense of the word. I have no linguistic background. Bosnian system is political, constitutional apartheid. We can debate that. I'd love to debate that with you and Vlad, I would love that. What Igor said about I can't even say the word, state where you have like a compromise situation where in this situation. The question for everybody is, if we have had this system for 27 years now, and we have mass exodus of all ethnic groups out of the country, we have mass destabilization, we have massive levels of corruption, we have basic social welfare, people, the standard of living is very low. Why is that an argument to keep coming back and saying, hey, let's all compromise with ethnic groups? And I'll repeat this again. We have constituent people in Bosnia. We don't have 3 nations by any definition, in however that way it applies. The Constitution says constituent people, not nations. Bosnia is 1 nation. The Constitution provides for 3 different constituent people. The idea of 3 nations is narrative that is abused by everybody in different ways. So, who was next? I want to say Piros, and then White.
If I can just
Igor,
three.
can you just check? Can you just wait? Do you mind? Piros, go ahead. I know you DM'd me, and I know you have something important to ask, so please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me talk. I just wanted to ask about sanctions against Russia, and why are we sanctioning Russia so much and allowing their allies to not be sanctioned, that abstain from voting against them in the UN and support them and buy their oil and buy their weapons? For example, Iran, they're actually going to lift the sanctions against Iran on Monday, according to a lot of the Iranian resistance and against the regime in Iran and stuff, that they're going to lift the sanctions against Iran, and there's going to be a nuclear deal with Iran. Why are we starting to do that when, you know, they are mass murderers there, and they used Russian weapons to shoot down Ukrainian airliners last year? They killed 200 people, students, Canadians, and Ukrainians, and I just don't think it's right when, you know, they're the number one human rights violators, and they're going to support Russia, and we're going to buy their oil, and then they're going to go and buy weapons from Russia, and Russia's going to get the money and through other means anyways.
So your question is why? Sorry, just to clarify your question, why?
Are we not sanctioning all of Russia's allies or those that abstain from sanctioning them and whatnot? And specifically, you know, one of their key allies, which is Iran. They're going to lift it. That's what I've heard from many sources in the media.
Is your question just limited to Iran? Or is your question limited to all the countries?
Nations that abstain
I know I saw it briefly. Does anybody who has their hand raised?
UN, how it works, and abstaining. Not really being that work where it's actually abstaining for many of the countries that do a lot of business with Russia. Many of the business, for example, I know somewhere more political, have more political alignments than others with Russia, but a lot of countries also buy a lot of food from Russia, a lot of grains, a lot of prime material that if they completely go against they supported condoning Russia could backfire at them, and they have millions of people that they gotta feed in a way, so they couldn't risk that part. So I do sympathize in that sense where they gotta feed their people, and they it's the only way to remain commercial partners. I know Belarus is being sanctioned already, and the countries that really were against condoning condemning Russia were very fringe countries with very fringe leaders, such as North Korea, um, Venezuela, Cuba, um, Eritrea. So countries that completely and 100% align with authoritarian regimes. So abstaining in a way was a way to remain to it wasn't exactly going against condemning. And then so that's mainly, I think, why they hasn't. One interesting point is that United Emirates had voted against the Security Council resolution, but actually abstained in the General Assembly resolution, meaning that they're moving towards, all right, this is too much. We were against condemning it before, but now we're moving to a more abstaining even.
Wait, do you know when that was? Sorry, do you know when that was?
That was in the past few days. So that was maybe
so
on
before
Wednesday.
last night.
Yeah, that was maybe on Wednesday. I don't know what happened last night.
There was a Russian military, well, their 223rd Flight Squadron, which technically it's technically listed as a commercial airline in a sense, but it's a part of their military, and it was going to, I don't know how many of y'all were on while I was like freaking out about this. Dude, like he wasn't landing, and I was like, what are you doing? Planes just leaving Moscow in general, but I'm wondering if that might be why they might be trying to like go sweet. Talk them to not,
more desperate. And I know we all like to think of this idea that there could be someone at OG that would off him inside, but given history, that's not very likely. Coups do happen with Khrushchev and so on. So there have been these events, but I wouldn't put my money on that assertion, I guess you could say. And if tensions rise with NATO, clearly the Russian military is not performing up to what people expected or estimated or whatever, and irrelevant of how things go in Ukraine, there's clearly glaring weaknesses, not only in Putin's strategy, but his ability to do X, Y, Z. However, you can never fully underestimate there and potentially opening up a successful. But I think the Balkans region is definitely because of
analysis.
Sure, I think it's the Serbia right now is quite isolated as well. They're kind of trying. They seem to be taking this middle road. They condemned Putin's actions in the General Assembly, but you see these street, protest or in support of Russia. So there's clearly some level of support for Russia within Serbia. Indifferent if it's the government, it's still, if not a majority, even a decent minority of people. I don't know how to, calculate. So Russia's ability to do things in normal peacetime, because getting resources from point A to point B is going to be particularly difficult for them, right? I mean, sure, they probably have people there, but fanning the flames, I think, especially because NATO is going to have a bit of a free hand. If there is, God forbid, another, risk of conflict, I have the inclination that particularly the European members of NATO, France, Germany, would move pretty quickly on this. While there's this surge of unity, I think people's eyes are open, governments, and I contrary to what all of my criticism of Western governments in the past, if this were to happen, I think NATO or a coalition of the willing would move really fastly on this and put a fire out on this. This is why, without getting too wordy, why I think even though Putin would consider this as an option, I don't think he would have too much success at it, because the status quo has changed, and the willingness.
What do you think? Sorry to interrupt you. Just to add to a fire in the Balkans, let's put it like that, would add to Putin. How do you think that would benefit him? I'm not saying it doesn't. I just really want your thoughts.
Sure. I think it's more distractions and it's more chaos in Europe, and I think that's been his aim all along, is divide and conquer. Russia has serious limitations, much more so now than it did before it made the decision to go in Ukraine. And while he could still while he could still I mean, let's that is one of the options on his table, to at least try to fan the flames and to escalate tensions. So why he would want to do that, I think he has a strategy to, well, never mind its success at this point, to divide and conquer in Eastern Europe. It doesn't mean he's just going to go marching through Europe. These kind of all maximalist ideas that, but again, he will not stop at Ukraine. If he's allowed to have his way, and he gets all or part of Ukraine, this idea that it's just going to stop at Ukraine. And I really hate making these comparisons, but in a sense, it is a bit like Nazi Germany, in the sense that it would stop at one place and it would go to another. So I want to be really careful about those comparisons, because they're very different in their own way. But make no mistake, Putin's aims for Eastern Europe, at least from my point of view, is a step-by-step. And that first, at a minimum, starts with what Russia calls its near abroad, and the nashi, which I'm sure any of you who speak a Slavic language or Russian know that means ours. So for him, Belarus and Ukraine are ground zero. And then you start talking about, I don't know, the Baltic states, Poland, the Visegrad, Southeastern Europe. So I think it's part of his aim to have partly a buffer, and what he sees as kind of in his, no matter how warped it is, this kind of prophetic view he has that Russia is the rightful controller of that space, Slavdom, if you want to call it. Use any word for it you want. But whether he opens up multiple strategies or not, he's always tried to assert, to the extent that he could, direct or indirect Russian influence in this part of Europe, because just listen to his words. He's been saying a lot of these things for 20 years or more. So some of this is unprecedented, yes, but it's not necessarily a surprise if you really listen to what he says and what he sees Russia as in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. I probably share most of those thoughts. I just have a quick request for anyone who is a speaker but who doesn't have their hand up. If you guys don't mind, I have people who want the mic. Could you just rotate yourself out if you don't want to speak right now? That would be really helpful, because I have people requesting and I can't approve their request because we have a max speakers. You can always request back later, or I just want to have like a good rotation through everybody. Sorry, Edgar, go.
I'll rotate out. I just wanted to clarify that apartheid is not rule of the minority. It's, or at least I couldn't find any definition of that. It's apartheid. It's come apart. Separation. And I'll cycle out.
Thanks, Edgar. I appreciate it. I think Karen, then White is silence, and then on Terry.
Telling you that I'm in complete solidarity with the people of Ukraine, but I just want to give a different perspective to this. I heard someone ask about why countries were abstaining from voting against Russia, and I'm from India. And I just like to give our point of view on this. There are a couple of reasons why we do that, and primarily is a historical relationship with them, that they've always stood by us. And secondly, and more importantly, it's because we've just got into a conflict with China last year, and we have Pakistan on one side and China on the other side. And all our military equipment, most of it, comes from Russia and our spares. So that's something that's reducing over the years. But a tectonic change will only happen in the long term. So those are primarily the reasons why I think India has abstained. But we've come out in support of Ukraine in all our statements, as in we've condemned Russia as well, and we've sent aid to Russia as well. Sorry, Ukraine as well. So I think this is more of a balancing act for us, but that doesn't mean we support Russia explicitly. And I just like to leave this on a question. I mean, we're forcing Putin's hand with the sanctions and everything. NATO is also supporting Ukraine with arms and ammunition. But have we taken into account the fact that in all prior conflicts involving Russia, they are prepared to pay a very heavy price compared to most other countries? And how does that factor in the medium term?
Thank you. I think that White is silent. I'm sorry, Ali. Is it Ali? Ali Mish, you're next. Sorry, go ahead. I was reading your Twitter name. Go ahead.
I'll try to keep this brief because I've been sitting on this, it feels like this entire week, but I want us to think about the fact that when we center and prioritize Western influences and perspectives in international politics and conflict in general, we are doing a disservice not only to ourselves, but the people who are being affected also around the world that maybe don't get as much attention. But I've been thinking about, how has Palestine not been brought up in this whole greater conversation of an invasion and an occupying force? And I think that part of it could be that it's a dirty word still to this day, no matter how progressive you are in a lot of countries. And right now, the Israeli prime minister is going to discuss with Putin, supposedly, how to resolve this, which, in the concept we are discussing of apartheid cannot sustain itself forever, it is ironic considering the Israeli government has seemed determined to pursue that goal. And if you look at the end of the 1967 war, the UN Resolution 242, the main problem with that was in the original language of the resolution, it said Israel must withdraw from the territories occupied. When that was translated, as resolutions must be, into other UN speaking languages, the word the was not translated. So when Israel withdrew from some of the territories occupied, they said, we have met the conditions of that resolution. Now, you've seen the UN pass a resolution that they've been clearer with their words, it appears, because they said immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw all of its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. And this is referring to Russia, of course. So I think, as far as our discussion earlier goes about Bosnia and the situation that occurs there now, we need to look at the actions of world leaders today and the fact that, to put it in simple terms, that Ukraine could be a Bosnia or a Serbia potentially at the end of this. And we want to make sure that the people fleeing in the humanitarian corridors, the people fleeing for their lives, for their safety, as they must, also have hope that one day that they can return. And it's not going to be a situation like Palestinians where generation after generation to this day are being born into refugee camps. They're being born as stateless people, as refugees. And if it was horrible, we allowed it to happen in the past, and we cannot allow it to happen now. So in general, I'd like to know if anyone has any thoughts and ideas as to how we can hold our leaders accountable to make sure that in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we don't have Ukrainians being born into refugee camps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I'll chime in on this for like 10 seconds, and I'm going to give the mic to someone else. As someone who was in a refugee camp and lived through that experience, how can you hold our leaders accountable? Massive question. It's impossible to have a war, national conflict, and have people come back without just, okay, the war's over now, everybody go back to your homes. That just never happens. And I'm glad you brought up Palestine, and I will add to that Palestine, Syria, Venezuela, Myanmar, 70 million refugees in the world. So there are 70 million displaced people in the world right now. And I'm not taking away anything from the million people that just go from Ukraine.
Found it so outrageous that I had to tweet about it. And I was like, my God, like, who would be so evil to do something.
Donate, feel free. I am not someone who's going to go out and ask for donations. That is not why I'm here for. What I'm asking you to do, because so many of us in the States, like I'm 55 and I am a combat veteran, I am disabled. I can't help in Syria, but I can help here. And a lot of us are in that position where we can't go, and we don't have any ammunition to send. We don't have any equipment to send. But there's so much what we can do right now for the refugees coming in. And like I've talked to refugee agencies, the best way that you can help is to help locally. Because if you're sending resources out to another state, then you're taking away resources from the refugees that may be coming to your state. Now, if you don't have any refugees coming to your state, feel free, send them our way. But please check with your own state first, or your own country, because obviously I'm talking from the USA, but there are many countries that are taking in refugees too, and there are many people on this space. So please check out your own refugee agencies. They need all the help they can get. Like, I'm talking about toothbrushes, toothpaste, feminine products, diapers. You know, when families